Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is Seeking Sustainability Live number 199. Wow. Thank you so much for joining, Louise.
Thank you for having me, Joy.
It's wonderful to talk to you because in the series so far, we have talked to people who have done PeaceBoat volunteering or internships, and then they've gone on to other things, being entrepreneurs or different careers. So it's so nice to talk to you and learn more about PeaceBoat and all the projects that you guys do. So thank you so much for joining today.
Well, thank you. And thank you to the people that came before.
Yeah. It's so nice. It must be so nice for you guys working at PeaceBoat to see what happens to people as they move on afterwards, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think as you said yourself, it's really a stepping stone for a lot of people, and both passengers, volunteers, or PeaceBoat staff members. And for a lot of people, this is really a way or a stepping stone towards more to exciting new challenges as well.
That's great. Mm-hmm. And I was reading on the website that there's about 100 staff, and many of the staff actually were volunteers or participants themselves. Is that right?
That's right. I don't think there's a rule, but this is often what happens, that people maybe set out just wanting to volunteer for a period of time, and you sort of fall in love with the PeaceBoat family, and then you stay on board. No pun intended. Yeah. So
and that was your story as well, right? You actually started as a participant.
Yes, so I actually started as a sort of a paying participant. I was an international passenger on our 81st voyage. And back then I was actually the only non-Japanese passenger. There were other non-Japanese people, but they were all either volunteers or staff members or crew members of the ship. So I was the only paying customer on the ship that was not from Japan. It's very exciting.
Yeah,
a bit nerve-wracking, but also exciting.
And then you were teaching, and then now you're more in a coordination role. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So for a couple of voyages, I was a volunteer English teacher, and now I work as an international coordinator, coordinating primarily our international guest educators on the ship. So not the English teachers, but the guest educators that we bring on the ship to give lectures or to run workshops before we visit the different ports of call.
Let's step back a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of PeaceBoat?
Sure. So yeah, actually, PeaceBoat started back in the 80s, in 1983, where a group of university students from Waseda University got together. I think this is quite interesting because PeaceBoat really is a Japanese NGO. A lot of people think it might be a non-Japanese NGO, and even people in Japan don't necessarily know that this is a Japanese NGO, but it really started here in Japan. And initially it was these students came together because the history textbooks in Japan were being revised, and the role of Japan, especially in the Second World War and leading up to the Second World War, was going to be downplayed in these new revisions. And these university students, they decided they wanted to visit the countries that, had been subject to Japanese imperialism leading up to the war. And they wanted to talk to people that had experienced this firsthand. And they chartered a ship, and in a way they set out thinking it would be just a one-off, and they visited different places. But when they came back, they realized that there was still a lot of interest and more people wanted to do this. So they set up a second voyage, and yeah, the rest is history.
It's really interesting, and that's really connected to what I was watching in the videos or learning about more recent programs even. It's really about peace building, but also building empathy and understanding with people in other cultures and other countries. And I heard this from participants as well who've been in the series, that even for them as international people or people who grew up in Japan and traveled before, even for them, they really felt a new connection and a new understanding to people around the world and the issues that they were facing. And we'll talk about it later, the connection to SDGs or people from island nations. These are some of the more like exciting recent projects I think that you're trying to do. So that empathy and connection and networking is one of the key reasons to keep PeaceBoat going all these years. Is that right?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's quite beautiful in a way that how it all started with, these personal meetings and the personal testimonies from people, and looking at what PeaceBoat does now, it's still at the core. It's about hearing from people themselves. It's as you said, it's building this empathy by hearing these personal testimonies. May it be, atomic bomb survivors, Hibakusha, or people from other parts of the world facing other challenges, environmental, social, political. So I think that it's wonderful that we are developing all the time, but there is something that remains that core, and that is that personal meeting and the sharing of testimonies, the exchange, which is really important.
I'm showing the core principles right here from the website. So seeing things with your own eyes, peace building through dialogue and personal testimonies, partnership and collaboration, for example, with onboard guests, educators, and partners in ports of call, but also with passengers and volunteers of a voyage, as well as non-voyage initiatives. So a bit later, we'll talk about conferences, for example, that you've been a part of, which participants do. Yeah, really interesting.
Yes. I think so from that list, of course, it's the testimonial, the sharing. And maybe in the beginning, it was very much going somewhere and just listening. And I think listening is still very much a key word. But maybe from listening, we have developed more towards exchange, where it's actually in that mutual exchange that we also find the empathy, and we build peace together. Yeah.
Interesting. And of course, during coronavirus is kind of a difficult transition. What has the PeaceBoat organization been able to continue during this kind of stay-at-home time?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Obviously, as an NGO that does not really receive funding apart from when we conduct voyages, suddenly for about a year not being able to, or more than a year actually, not being able to conduct voyages is pretty is pretty critical. But at the same time, it's been super inspiring to see how everyone just came together as an NGO, and but within PeaceBoat, but also with our partners, how we managed to somehow bring a lot of the really good stuff from the voyages. We managed to bring that online. We conducted 2 global voyages online, where we checked in with people around the world, partners around the world. We are conducting online, I think you might talk about it or ask about it, but these online Hibakusha testimonies, where atomic bomb survivors share their testimonies online. And actually, yeah, in some ways, through these online projects, I found that we sometimes reach people that we would not otherwise reach just through a regular voyage, or we are able to connect partners that we meet when we go to that particular country or to that particular region. But actually now we are connecting those partners with people right here in Japan or in other Asian countries. So, I mean, somehow it was a very challenging situation, but it also forced us to be innovative and creative. And in some ways, I feel like we have connected people even better through some of our online projects. That said, I don't think we can disregard the importance of also meeting in person and not just meeting through Zoom and discussing serious topics, but also just hang out and have dinner together. And these more casual meets, those are very, very important too. But it's been quite inspiring to see all the new initiatives that have started. Yeah.
Logistically, how long would one of the tours or one of the
voyages
how long would they last?
A full global voyage is around 3 months. But then in between these global voyages, we also have shorter voyages, which can be from a week, for example, around New Year's. We can have a New Year's voyage that is maybe a week, or Golden Week, this special holiday week here in Japan. But or maybe slightly longer, like a month. We've had sort of an Asian voyage that lasted about a month. But a full global voyage is about 3 months. Yeah.
And
It
I'm
doesn't feel like it though.
showing pictures. Of course, every picture of a voyage, you have so much interaction. You have people doing presentations on stage, and then you have volunteer activities, or you going to farms. But everything is tight groups, people together. So of course, this is not possible during coronavirus, and this is not really possible to transition to online only, like you said. So let's hope the vaccine can get out and things can go back a little bit, start again. Do you have a plan, like for the next stage, like maybe less passengers or more social distancing? Are you guys planning for this?
Yes, I mean, actually, we've been planning for this for the past year. Ever since the pandemic started, this has been sort of the main topic of conversation, I would say. How can we conduct voyages, in a safe way? And we've actually chartered a new ship because of this, Pacific World, which is a much larger ship. But we are not planning on, as long as there is still a risk, we are not going to, fill the ship to full capacity. We're gonna enable more space between people, and of course we're also going to make sure that everyone gets tested and so on before we even set sail. But I mean, yes, it is definitely something that we take very, very seriously. We have to, not just on the ship, but we are also visiting ports of call where we have a responsibility to take care and to be careful. Yeah.
Now, it looks like you have so many key collaborators. Can you talk about some of the networks that you work within United Nations, for one?
Yes. So PeaceBoat is a campaigner for the SDGs, the the Sustainable Development Goals, and we work quite closely with the SDGs action campaign. We participate when they have their annual, global festival of action for the SDGs. We have given presentations there and run workshops there as well. So the SDGs is really it's a key word in our programs as well. We keep that in mind. Yeah.
The interesting project called Against the Tide, talking with people from island nations. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. We have several youth programs within PeaceBoat. One is called Youth for the SDGs, and which is mostly coordinated by our partner organization in the US, PeaceBoat US. And then we have a program called the Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador Program, where, as you said, we bring, originally it was youth from small island nations. They joined the ship and discussed different issues related to climate change and ocean conservation. Nowadays, we've sort of expanded the program a little, and now it's a little bit broader. It's youth from areas affected by climate change. So you don't have to be from a small island state, but a lot of the youth are, of course, still from small island states because they are, some of the most affected areas of climate change. Mm-hmm.
It looked really powerful, and connecting these young people from island nations to people in Western countries around the world, and them sharing fun activities and getting to know each other and hearing about their reality. That's a really powerful part of the program, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And also, a lot of the people selected for these programs, they already do amazing things back home. So there's so much to learn from. Obviously, we also hope that they will learn something coming on the ship and visiting. They join exposure programs in ports of call, so they also learn new things that they can bring home. But they already do really amazing things for their local communities. And, it's such an honor to be able to hear from them and learn from them on the ship and, or in with our partners in Port of Call. So it's really a win-win. I would say really a win-win program, having these, young ambassadors come on board.
Yeah, that's great. And then on board, you have lessons, you have different talks from different people. Can you talk a little bit about on board kind of educational activities?
Sure. So yeah, it's very interesting, this program on board. I think if people saw, a schedule of just one day, people would think it was the schedule for like a week or a month or something. There's so much happening at the same time. So we have multiple venues. I guess it's kind of like if anyone here in Japan knows Fuji Rock Festival, where there are multiple stages and concerts happening at the same time. This is PeaceBoat, very much so. You have lectures from guest educators. Maybe you have workshops, but there are also more social activities. There's a lot of physical activity, dancing, exercising. So bringing people together through music and dance and sport. That's really important as well. It's not just to exercise. It's also really a way to bring people together, especially because we also have people on the ship that don't speak the same language. So being able to do something that does not necessarily involve speaking the same language, I think, is really, really crucial. And then there's another thing one of my favorite things about the onboard program. This is something we call them self-organized events. And these events are actually events organized by passengers. And whereas PeaceBoat, we decide main lectures and main events, a huge part of the program is actually up to the participants. And this is a way sort of to give the passengers or participants ownership of the program as well. If you're interested in climate change, well, you can conduct a discussion session about climate change. If you want to show your travel photos, you can do that as well. Any topic pretty much is all right. And yeah, it can be large, it can be small. And this is also a good example of sort of this exchange where we are not just spoon feeding, education. No, we have a mutual responsibility and there's this mutual exchange. So I really love these self-organized events that participants can organize. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's so important.
Yes.
And just today, I was listening to, I'm a big follower of the podcast Pod Save America. And
yes.
they were talking about ignorance versus evil. That ignorance is something easy to fix because you can educate. You can get people exposure to what they're ignorant about. But evil, there's nothing you can do, right? But when you see the pictures of PeaceBoat, you hear the stories from PeaceBoat, you hear about people sitting next to a Muslim for the first time, meeting someone well beyond their scope that they would never have even thought about meeting in their life. And their eyes and their experience really opening up, as well as their hearts, and meeting them personally, as opposed to just hearing about their stories or seeing about them online. This is really powerful, and this is the reason to continue doing the PeaceBoat kind of philosophy. I imagine. Is that right?
Definitely. Oh yes, definitely. And again, as I said, when I first met PeaceBoat, it was still very much a Japanese project. I mean, there were lots of guest educators and partners from different parts of the world, but PeaceBoat was still trying to find a model where we could bring more non-Japanese passengers on the ship. And this has really happened over these past 10 years, and it's really amazing to see the change. We have a lot of participants from Asian countries, and again, back to where it all started. It started as a peace building project in this region, in the Northeast Asian region, and well, we are back to that, right? We're bringing people together and hopefully, building or creating friendship and this empathy that you also mentioned that is so important.
So there's not only education, but also kind of activism.
Yes.
Some of the events I see on the beaches, for example, cleaning up the beaches, analyzing the type of waste you might find.
Yes.
Also anti-nuclear demonstrations in different areas. One of your collaborators is ICANN, right?
Yes. Yep. Yes, that's right. I think, because we are so privileged. We are visiting so many different countries in a span of 3 months. This is really a chance to bring a campaign from country to country and from place to place. So we've had, for example, many atomic bomb survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki sail with us and give their testimonies in different ports of call, meeting not just locals but meeting with politicians, talking to policymakers, and really advocating for the eradication of nuclear weapons. So being able to transport people that way on the ship and then conduct different forms of events in port of call is really is unique. We don't have to fly anywhere. We're bringing all the materials. We're bringing all the people. Yes.
Now, of course, this kind of training, this experience as training, this experience as foundation for what they'll do next is amazingly important and amazingly sustainable. Is there any kind of other aspect that happens because of the interaction, because of the learning? Like, for example, is there a journal that a lot of the students who join the program, would they be adding this to their thesis? Is there other kind of like actionable close reaction to their experience? Do you know what I mean? Like books written or journal entries or part of their university study or something?
I know that some people use their experience. Actually, I used my my experience on board as sort of the base for my master thesis in the peace and conflict studies, where I wrote about peace education, and I used PeaceBoat as a case study. So yes, that does happen. But also, I think it's more, as I said, this stepping stone. People get inspired, after joining the voyage or after working for PeaceBoat for a period of time. Some people finally have the courage to start that NGO that they've always been dreaming of starting, or that they never knew they wanted to start, but suddenly they realized, hey, actually, I could do more. I want to do this. So I think in that sense, it really, a lot of the people I joined the 81st voyage with, some of the younger people, PeaceBoat was sort of their first time away from home and the first time leaving Japan. And some of them chose PeaceBoat because they thought it felt safer. And then they realized, oh, wow, this is so inspiring. I wanna do more. And a lot of people afterwards volunteered, for example, through JICA or, or even started NGOs. So I think somehow it builds your confidence, and you realize that there's so much you can do, event coordination or, other projects as well. So I think it's really a confidence booster.
Can you talk a little bit about, if you know, what is the difference between an NGO, non-government organization, and an NPO, a non-profit organization? Like how is it different? Is an NGO also non-profit, or is it a little bit different?
That's actually a good question. To be honest, I'm probably not the right expert to answer this question, but definitely as an NGO, you're not supported in any way by the government. You don't receive any funding from the government. I guess you could choose to be, I don't know if you can be a non-NPO and also be an NGO. To be honest, I'm not sure. But in our case, it is non-profit in the sense that PeaceBoat, as I said, our only income are the voyages. So we are NGO in that sense. Yeah. But I'm not sure whether it's possible to be one or the other and not the other. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot.
No,
I
no.
often hear NGO or NPO,
Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
not actually that clear on what the
To
difference
be
is.
honest, I've also heard NPO more like non-political organization. So that's another sort of use, I guess, of NPO, where you do not belong to any sort of uh, party or political party in that sense. So I've heard it used in that sense too, NPO and NGO.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, that
yeah.
makes sense because how it was founded by students who
Mm,
wanted to learn the truth that the government was not telling them,
yes,
then of course they wanted to start a non-government organization that was kind of a third party, right?
yeah. And I think that's, I mean, probably for most NGOs, this is the real reason, but I think this is very important. I mean, we have to, to be able to hear the different voices, not only the people we agree with, but also, the people we disagree with, and then try to reach that mutual understanding. So if you had to, follow a certain government or, yeah, it wouldn't really work. So, yeah, I think it's very important to be both politically but also governmentally sort of independent, definitely. Yeah.
There is a fundraiser, it looks like a crowdfunding happening for
Hmm.
Tohoku right now.
Yes,
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
sure. So PeaceBoat also has a disaster relief unit, PeaceBoat Disaster Relief, and at the moment, because it's the 10-year anniversary of the tsunami and the earthquake in Tohoku, PBV is running a crowdfunding campaign for that. Um, of course, PBV has been supporting Tohoku over these past 10 years. Actually, PeaceBoat Disaster Relief started sort of as a reaction to this disaster. But to be able to continue, we are running a crowdfunding campaign for that as well. Yes.
As we are kind of uh, not celebrating but commemorating the 10 years since the
Mm,
disaster,
yeah.
what do you know what activities Peaceboat did in 2011 right after the disaster?
Yes. So actually, through PeaceBoat Disaster Relief, we sent volunteers and so personnel, but also, of course, material goods. We sent support that way to help clean up, to help with, in the shelters and so on. So PeaceBoat has actually been very active up there since the very beginning, especially sending volunteers and PeaceBoat staff. Yes.
Yeah, I heard that the
I believe
Peaceboat.
you had one of our uh, Robin Lewis, who used to
Mm-hmm.
work for PeaceBoat Disaster Relief. I think he was in your program as well, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
we've
Yeah.
we've had a chance to talk to Robin two times. Yeah,
Yes. Great.
and
Yeah.
he's done a lot of work in the Tohoku area, but also starting that amazing My Mizu campaign,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Wonderful. Yeah. Let's
Now
get rid of
that
this.
that we can go back to because I'd love to know. Of course, as traveling by cruise ship
Yes.
might not be the most
Mm.
sustainable choice of
Yes.
travel, but of
Mm-mm.
course, when you're trying to get to island nations, when you're trying to get to Tohoku, it's perfect. There is
Yes.
no better way to travel.
That's right.
But in terms of waste and use of water and energy, it's
Yes.
not the most ideal way to travel. Can you talk a little bit about why Peaceboat thinks the boat is still a really important mode
Right.
of transport?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. It's I think in many ways, traveling is really not that sustainable. We should probably all just stay home. But in fact, as we talked about before, bringing people together in one space like the ship is really really unique. And the ship somehow it I like to describe it as a sort of it's a home where it's no one's home court, if that makes sense. It's a neutral space. It's a safe space where it's not like, yeah, my country, my town. So I have a little bit more right. On the ship, technically everyone is sort of visiting, but at the same time, we are on the ship for so long that the ship also becomes home. So this is really unique. I think people are more equal on the ship than they would be in any other sort of part of the world. And I think that's very important. And again, being able to spend so much time together. You know, being on a ship is wonderful, but it's also challenging. You know, it's you can't just leave. You know, you are stuck on this ship until you reach port. So it really forces you to handle whatever issues you might have, and you know, it's tough sometimes, I know, but at the same time, this is really also where all the conflict resolution and the peace building happens. It's also in the fact that you can't just, oh, I don't want to talk to you. I'm out of here. I'm just going to leave. No, I mean, you're stuck with this person. So you might as well continue the dialogue and find that, you know, mutual ground that you deep down want to find. So in that sense, I think the ship will always be a very special place for this, for the peace building project. Yeah.
That's a really good point, right? It's like the United Nations. It's when you're in the water, it's no one country.
Yes.
It's neutral territory.
Yes.
So I've heard this from UNITAR, which is based in Hiroshima, right opposite the A-bomb dome, the atomic bomb dome relic. After the bomb, it's left standing to remind us what happened in 1945. And their offices look out onto the A-bomb dome. Yes. And they say that is a really powerful way to get warring nations representatives to talk and to do conflict negotiation and to talk about how we might work out our differences, because we don't want that to happen. Exactly. Right? Yeah. And I think, like being on the boat as well, you're in neutral territory. Maybe it's easier to talk about differences. You can also talk about the ocean, which is such a huge climate change issue, plastic pollution issue. It's all about the ocean, island nations. It's about the ocean. And this is something we all share, no matter what country we're from, right?
And the thing is, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, you know, the ship is a prison, because it really isn't. I mean, of course, you are sort of stuck on the ship, but at the same time, as you said, you have the ocean. And I'm one of those people, like, I absolutely love being on the ocean. I love the ocean. I love sailing. And yeah, when things are tough and you go and you look over this vast ocean, you don't see land. It's really soothing. So I think that also does a lot of good for people. You know, you get that grounding, even though you're on water. So, and of course, seeing this beautiful, beautiful ocean every day, it also reminds you that we have to take care of it and we need to protect it, and that it's very, very special. And then I one more thing. I think it's often said, but I remember one guest educator that actually said this in a lecture, and it made such a big impression on me. You know, he described how normally we've seen the ocean as something that we had to conquer, or we had to cross to get somewhere. But you know, when you're on a ship, the whole ocean becomes your road. It becomes the thing that connects people. And I think that just realizing that is, you know, just generates an even greater sense of appreciation for the ocean. Because yeah, as you said, there are some places that you can't really access any other way. You have to sail, maybe in a small boat or a large boat, but you still have to sail. And yeah, in that sense, sailing is just your ship or a boat is really, really special in a way.
Yeah. I think also something that very few of us who live in cities are ever able to experience is the night sky. The beautiful stars. And then I think it was Nina Cataldo who was a interpreter on one of your trips, and she talks about seeing the northern lights and how amazing it was, right? So these phenomenons. And then for me, whenever I see somewhere where you can see the stars really well, and don't you feel small?
Oh yeah.
And don't you feel like I'm planet Earth team, you know, like I'm not American or I'm not Japanese. No. I'm a member of planet Earth, and we're all in this together, you know, and seeing the stars and thinking about space, that's really important too, right?
That's true. That's very true. I mean, obviously, with a big ship, there's a lot of light sometimes, but you can still really enjoy the beautiful sky. And some of the most magical nights are when we actually get permission to turn off most of those lights, and we get to see the black starry sky without sort of any lights on, apart from the most important ones, so that we don't get hit by other ships. But that is impressive. It's really indescribable. Yeah. Yeah.
We have a comment from Mary who's joined, and she said the crowdfunding campaign Louise mentioned for sustaining disaster relief efforts even amidst the COVID pandemic is here, so she's given the link. I'll add the link below as well. Yes. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, great.
Now, speaking of the ship, there are exciting plans for a more sustainable, more environmentally friendly ship, which I'm very excited about. Can you tell us a little bit about the Eco Ship?
Sure. I mean, it's still, very much a project in the making. It's being developed. But yes, this is, as we talked about, we need to acknowledge that, of course, the cruise industry traditionally is maybe not the most sustainable of industries. So I think we have a responsibility to conduct our voyages in as sustainable a way as possible. And this Eco Ship is a really new, exciting project where we are basically planning to build the world's most sustainable cruise ship, where we can cut CO2 emissions and reuse water and use sails whenever possible. And so there are a lot of really interesting, innovative ideas being put into this new ship. Yes.
That's wonderful. It's so exciting to see the solar panels that are on the ship, the idea of reutilizing wastewater or having a closed cycle for water.
Yes.
There's so many cutting edge sustainability ideas, and I'm sure it's really hard to decide on a plan because these kinds of ideas are always developing. So it must be like you have a plan and then suddenly something new
and cool and exciting comes along. Exactly. You want to include that too. Definitely. I mean, I'm not one of the people working specifically on this project, so obviously I don't know all the details, but I'm sure that's one of the challenges, like when do you say, okay, enough is enough, or okay, now we made a decision. It must be very tough. I know one of the things, again, I don't know if it's going to be a part of sort of the final project, but one idea was, for example, to have, to be able to generate electricity when you walk on the stairs, or, people walking on the stairs would, so you could, power the lights or something. And all these, as you said, there's so many cool things out there. It's, I can't wait to see what it's going to be like. Yeah, it's really, really exciting.
Very exciting. And it says it can have up to 2,000 passengers. And that's pretty normal for your existing ships, right? It looks like you can have between 1,000 and 2,400 passengers at a time. Is that right?
So with the Pacific World, this new ship that we chartered, yes, we can have up to that. I think with the previous ship we had, we would typically sail with maybe 800 to 1,000 people, I think. Again, please don't get too caught up in the exact numbers, but something around that. So it's definitely it's a bit larger than what we've done before, but still, yes, it's around the same. Yeah.
Well, I think even though the plans have been put off a little bit because of coronavirus, I'm really hoping that this goes ahead. And I think even just talking about it seriously, planning for it, raising money for it, this helps push the industry in the right direction for cruise ships. And if other cruise ship companies see that this is actually happening, that's going to be a huge selling point that this is more sustainable. Maybe we should do that, right? So it kind of moves the whole industry in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's the dream, right? It's, if we can, as you said, if we can sort of inspire others to follow suit, that would be amazing. Definitely. I think we have to, if we want to all, as you said, all types of traveling, all types of tourism, or most types of tourism, but all types of traveling, in some ways is not great for the environment. So I think we really have a responsibility to do it in the most sustainably possible way. Yeah.
I know it's so hard, right? For
Yes.
industries or organizations like yours, the focus is on people. And I
Yes.
often come across this, right? If the focus is on people, social sustainability,
Yes.
quite often the environmental side kind of falls on the wayside because you can't concentrate on everything,
Right.
So I understand
Yes.
that, but it's so nice to see that you are integrating
Yes.
education about SDGs and people, because
Yes.
they are so connected, and
Yes.
they do hinge on each other so much. You really can't separate them, right?
I mean, you mentioned the ocean and the climate youth ambassador program as well, where with these youth, and I think this is a very obvious example of how climate, the environment, and social issues are closely connected. So I think I don't think we can focus on social issues without actually taking environmental issues into account as well. A lot of conflicts, a lot of wars are fought because of environmental issues or because of climate change. So it's all connected for sure. Yes.
Absolutely. Why do we go and fight certain wars?
Yes.
Until now, it was because of oil, right? And natural resources. In the future, I think it's going to be about water or about being displaced because of environmental change. And I know a lot of environmentalists also feel that way. So, of course, social impact and environmental impact just cannot be separated. So, it's wonderful to see that you're incorporating both.
Yes.
I know
I think
it's really hard, but
but I think it's necessary. Yes. I mean, climate refugees is sadly already an issue, and it will continue to be. So we need to consider all of those aspects. Yeah.
I'm showing Against the Tide, which is the
Yes.
Vimeo beautiful film that was
Yes.
made about
Good.
this project and the SDGs and the island nations youth. And I would encourage everybody to go and watch that. It's freely available on the PeaceBoat website. We'll link that below. Another really interesting project was the Germans talking about taking responsibility for the past, German students. Can you talk about that a little bit? I found that really interesting.
Yeah, we have a partnership with Tübingen University and Berghof Foundation in Germany, and on different voyages we've been able to bring university students from Tübingen University on the ship, and their main focus is the whole idea of how to deal with the past. This question: how do you deal with the past, especially when you, as German students, they have had to deal with a pretty awful past from the Second World War, and then they discuss how they did it, but also how they are still learning to deal with the past in Germany. And bringing German students on the ship, and especially talking and discussing with people from Japan. This is really interesting because, Japan and Germany have had maybe different ways of dealing with the past, but there are also some similarities in the history and in the challenges that they have faced, for example, after the Second World War. So, these discussions are, of course, very, very complex and I'm sure challenging, but it's really, they're very important dialogues to have. Yes. And just like with our other youth programs, whenever they sail with the ship for a period of time and in different ports of call, they go and on study tours or exposure programs where they learn more. They investigate this question more in these different ports of call. So it's very exciting, a very exciting program as well.
Wow, that's so interesting. We had a documentary filmmaker, Fritz Schumann, in the series, who was talking about making a documentary in Hiroshima about Rabbit Island, Okunoshima, which is actually where poison gas was made during the war.
Yes. Oh,
And
yeah.
his documentary research took him to people in China because
Yes.
the poison gas made in Okunoshima was actually used during the war
Mm.
in China. So he followed up as part of his film.
Yes.
And he said, as a German, he felt this is so natural. We have to accept what our country did in the past, and we have to kind of own it and be honest about it. And then we can move forward. And I agree. And I think that is often a conflict in Hiroshima, but Hiroshima Peace Park is doing it so well. They're kind of, this happened, it was horrible, we don't want it to happen again, let's move forward. And I think that's kind of the peace boat mentality, right? Like, let's talk about it honestly, let's be transparent, and let's make a better future.
Yeah, definitely. But I think Germany is really special in that sense, you know. They have really taken on that responsibility, you know. They they own up, as you said, they own up to what took place during the Second World War, and now they're really doing what they can for this not to happen again. It is, I'm sure it's very difficult, and very much so still in Japan, discussing these topics, and especially reaching some sort of consensus is obviously even more difficult. But it's nice to bring some people on board that, you know, that have been through or are going through that same process. And I think that's sometimes easier than someone from Denmark who is like, it's very easy to stand in front of everyone and say, you should own up to your difficult past. But then you look at Danish history, and yeah, we have some black chapters as well, but you know, nothing that measures up to sort of the Holocaust or you know, something like that. So it's much better that it comes from German students than from young Danish students in a way. Yeah.
And it's so connected to everything, right? It's all about privilege, and if you are privileged, you don't see it, right? And it's only when you're not privileged that you're fighting against it, and people who are privileged find it hard to empathize with that. So in so many of your programs, that helps to bridge that gap.
Yes.
So that's
and it's
wonderful.
not really about, you know, casting blame. You know, the whole idea here is that, you know, we don't want this history to repeat itself. So let's learn from it. Let's talk about it. But it's not really about, you know, pointing fingers and saying, you're the bad guy, you're the good guy. No, I mean, usually in war and in conflict, there are not that many, you know, just good guys or bad guys. It's very, murky and gray rather than black and white. So it's never really about casting blame. It's more about, as you said, avoiding that this will ever happen again.
It must be really hard as a non-government organization to not be constantly political, right? Like to find that middle ground between politics, and to try to do good without being too political. It must be so difficult. How could you give us an idea? How is that done?
Yes, I mean, I think maybe this is an answer where I should say right now I'm completely answering as Louise, because I do think this is something even within PeaceBoat or within an NGO, this is of course always challenging, and people might not agree. I personally think that any NGO is political. You know, we are not party political. We do not support a specific political party, but you know, we have very clear opinions about certain things. Like actually, March 11th is coming up very soon. As we talked about the 10-year anniversary of the Tohoku disaster, and in that regard, we are part of organizing a global conference against not only nuclear weapons but also against nuclear power. And obviously, this is a political, in my opinion, again, I'm not speaking as PeaceBoat, but this is a political stance. So we have clear opinions about certain issues. But I think in the way where we try to still, you know, move more towards sort of the neutral middle ground, this is by making sure we bring different voices on the ship as well. And when we discuss a topic, we try to discuss it in a nuanced manner, not in this black and white manner. So I think it's important to represent all parties of a conflict if you want to discuss a conflict. But in my personal opinion, I think it's unrealistic to think that we can ever be neutral in that sense, because we do have clear opinions. I mean, even the SDGs are not neutral. We have the SDGs are very much political, and but it's not party political. It's more about how we believe that humans should live with one another, and how we believe that how we believe in treating the planet and so on. But in my personal opinion, that is still politics.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. There's a huge debate going on in America right now to raise the minimum wage, for example. Yes. And a lot of people who are against it seem to be arguing that for some people to get more, that means I have to get less, and worried about an injustice happening to them, coming from a position of privilege. But it's complicated, and it's connected to taxes, and it's connected to, social services, which are paid by taxes. And it's a very confusing situation. And then in this whole age of fake news and the lie becoming like as much news attention as the truth, it's a very difficult world for people to kind of
and we
work
don't know
out,
what the truth is, and we don't know what the lie is, right? It's so
yeah. Wow. Yeah. Very, very difficult, but I'm happy to see that you're challenging it and making adjustments along the way, and collaborating with lots of good organizations who also have a lot of research, have a lot of research development with scientists and different people around the world, like United Nations. I'm sure that helps a lot. You're not alone. You're collaborating and networking with others.
And I think that, understanding that as an NGO, as an organization, you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to be the one that knows everything before you even study it. I think acknowledging that we can always learn, and acknowledging that we can always change. I think this is what will bring us forward. And that's, as you said, we collaborate with people all over the world, even within PeaceBoat. It's not just about nationality, but it's personality, it's age, it's interest. It's so diverse. And this is also a way that we continue to grow as an organization, is actually to learn from this diversity within the organization as well. If we were all the same and all agreed, I actually don't think we would evolve very much. So I think it's great to acknowledge that we can always learn more, and we can always change. Yeah,
absolutely. Just like sustainability, seeking sustainability, we're always looking for the next better option. We don't have all the answers. We're still looking, right?
Yes, definitely.
So if people do want to take part or volunteer or work for PeaceBoat, can you lay that out a little bit? How would people, when's your next voyage, or what opportunities are available?
So in terms of volunteering, as I mentioned, I was a volunteer teacher. We typically have English and Spanish teachers on board. So this is one way, and you can be from any country. That's a possibility. We also have volunteer interpreters that join the ship. And the volunteer options that we have, people can check our website. There is one point called Get Involved, and people can see. When it comes, if people are interested in becoming, a staff member, that's maybe a slightly more complicated process. But of course, I would say contact PeaceBoat and let us know, send us your resume, and then we'll see. Sadly, I'll probably not be the one making that decision, but of course, we're always interested. And again, if anyone has some cool projects they would like to introduce, they would like us to know more about, they would like to collaborate, again, send us an email, and we would love to look into possible collaboration as well.
That's wonderful. We just have 5 more minutes. Can you talk a little bit about the beyond the voyage kind of events or activities that PeaceBoat does?
Right. So as I already mentioned, here on March 11th, we have a huge global conference to commemorate the 10 year of Fukushima, the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster. So we often organize or take part in conferences, symposiums, and so on, focusing on, for example, climate change or oceans, or in this case, nuclear issues. So this is something we're very busy with. Then, I mentioned our online Hibakusha testimonies. We have set a very ambitious goal that we would like to conduct online atomic bomb survivor testimonies in 190 countries, and 100 of those we hope to do within this year. So it'll be a busy year ahead. So again, if anyone has ideas for maybe places that would be interested in hosting sort of an online Hibakusha testimony, please contact us, because we're looking for partners, and not just in Japan, all over the world. Yes, so conferences, symposiums, and as I said, also whenever we have the global action campaign for the SDGs, run by SDGs Action Campaign, we often participate with sort of workshops or presentations, or just as participants, because again, we are there to learn as well. So,
yeah, that's great. And I think I read that the next voyage is scheduled for the end of this year. Is that look like it's going ahead, or are things being pushed a bit further back?
Actually, I mean, for now we are still planning towards summer, actually, August and so on. But yeah, of course, it depends on how the situation develops. But with the vaccines rolling out now and so on, it's quite a relief, you know. We've been waiting for that. Yeah.
Can you? We have just a few more minutes. I'd love to hear any stories that you had as a teacher or as a participant that really stayed with you and really made you feel like PeaceBoat is doing something really good for the world.
Oh, wow. Like, in a way, so many stories to choose from. How do I choose one? But no, I think one thing that I'd like to emphasize, because it's a question that often comes up, you know, like, what are the type of participants you have on the ship? And you look at the pictures and you see that a lot of them are seniors, or maybe 60 plus, and it's not really your typical activist organization, you know, with a lot of young people. We have a lot of young people on board as well, but we also have a large group of older participants. And I think what I've experienced is that there are some of these participants that or even, you know, all of the participants, there are some participants that join at first just because they want to see the world, they want to travel, and maybe they want to take it easy. And every voyage, I talk to so many people that tell me, hey, I was planning on reading a ton of books. I was planning on getting a tan by the pool, and I haven't read a single book. I've been busy running to lectures. I've been busy helping out with this one project. And these stories, for me, this is what it's all about. Because, you know, yeah, it's easy to preach to the choir, but when you talk to people that actually joined for a different reason, and they got so excited about all these projects and events that they didn't get to read a single book, then I think we're doing something right. And so those stories every year or every voyage I'm on, they make me so happy, and it's very, very motivating. So
that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen it myself, and anybody who follows this series would have seen it, that PeaceBoat comes up again and again as something that was a foundation of someone developing their idea or innovation. And the PeaceBoat experience, either as a volunteer or working, sparked something. Not only in their mind, but emotionally, and made them very passionate about helping others and helping the environment. So you're obviously doing something right. Keep it up.
We'll do our best. Yeah. And as you said, I think sometimes it can be the new idea that's generated on the ship, but it can also just be building that confidence necessary to take an idea that has been there all along, but to to realize that idea. Because I think a lot of people have dreams and they have things they want to do. They just don't feel confident enough. And then, go on the ship, try to, plan an event and be in charge of different projects and realize you have the potential to do so much. So, build confidence that way. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Louise. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you for having me.
That was great. And you are our last talk before the 200th. Thank you so much.
Wow. Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
What an accomplishment.
So tomorrow, from 12 o'clock until 3:33, I am doing a 200-minute marathon session trying to talk about the series, tell lots of stories, and wish me luck. 3 hours, 33 minutes.
Make sure to have a big glass of water.
I will have to have lots of coffee on hand, I think.
Yeah.
But it's been such a wonderful year and a wonderful 200 guests. And thank you so much for being a part of it, Louise.
No, thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work and best of luck getting back to voyages and different kinds of events, even while we're in coronavirus. Please take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you, much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining and for your comments. Maki has some applause at the end. Thank you, Maki. Everyone, have a good day, and please join me tomorrow as I recap the year's 200 episodes from 12 o'clock noon Japan time. Take care, everyone. See you. Bye. Thanks, Louise.